In your words, what's been going on so far today?
My wife got up at 5 this morning, went running, and I stayed in bed. When I woke up and she was gone, I just figured she hadn't awakened me, just let me sleep. So I went looking for her.
Okay, how did you know where to go look?
Because she runs in the same place every day.
When 27-year-old Lori Hacking went missing after a morning run, friends and family began a frantic search to bring the pregnant woman back home safely. Little did anyone know that her fairy tale life was built on falsehoods. And when a marriage is founded on lies, the only vow that matters is "till death do us part." Hello and welcome back to Mysterious 7. Today we look at a case with the most insane twist you've ever heard, the case of Lori Hacking. But before we do that, please remember to subscribe and like our channel. Also, don't forget to click on the notification bell to get the latest content directly to your inbox. Now let's dive into another mystery. Founded on July 24, 1847 by a group of Mormon pioneers, Salt Lake City is the capital of Utah. Separated by the Wasatch Mountains on the east and the Oquirrh Mountains to the west, Salt Lake City is known as an arid mountain desert. It's home to the first Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise. The city even boasts their own spooky legend, that of the North Shore Monster, a monster with the head of a horse and body of a crocodile, which many still believe haunts the Great Salt Lake. Today, however, our story looks at a different type of monster, the most dangerous kind, the human kind. Lori K. Soares Hacking was born on December 31st, 1976. Her biological mother was just a child herself at the age of just 13. She opted to give her daughter up for adoption. 4 months later, she found her forever family with Thelma and Oraldo Soares. The couple were from California and had been eager to bring home a sibling for their adopted 7-year-old son, Paul. They called her their angel baby, as she had been the answer to their prayers. Being Mormon missionaries, Thelma and Oraldo raised Lori and Paul in a loving home filled with devotion to their religion and family. Thelma, who learned Portuguese, also taught her children the language in order for them to learn and understand a bit more of their father's Brazilian heritage. However, in 1987, Thelma and Oraldo divorced, having grown apart over the years. Lori would have been just 10 years old at the time. Oraldo continued to live in California along with Paul, who was graduating from high school and would soon go off to do his missionary work. Lori and Thelma, however, moved to Orem, Utah for a fresh start. At first, it was a difficult transition for Lori, as she was very close to her father, but time would eventually heal the wounds. It was in Orem that the pieces of Lori's life started to fall into place. She excelled at school, and among her friends and family, she was considered a kind-hearted and outgoing young lady. Those that knew and loved her would say she had a way of understanding everyone around her. Her ability to maintain academic excellence while working a part-time job continued throughout her academic career. Lori was the type of person who knew where she was going and had a plan for her life. Part of that plan was meeting her Prince Charming and being able to raise her very own family. Little did she know, her own fairy tale would begin on a school camping trip. In 1994, while on a Orem High School seniors camping trip to Lake Powell, Lori met Mark Hacking. Mark was a prankster and had been fooling around with his friends. Without thinking, he tossed a smoldering log back into the fire with his bare hands, accidentally burning himself. Ever the helpful person, Lori came to his aid and treated his wounds before bandaging them up. The rest, as they say, was history. Under the cover of the stars and the dying campfires, Mark and Lori's love story began as they talked late into the night. Soon, Lori would tell her mom all about Mark and never looked at another man in that way again. Being Mormon as well, Mark was about to embark on his missionary work in 1996 at the age of 20. The couple maintained a loving long-distance relationship as Mark went off to Winnipeg, Canada to carry out his duties. However, Mark returned earlier than expected after one of his roommates allegedly broke missionary rules and involved him in the scandal. Lori stood by him throughout this trying period, and when he returned home, they picked up right where they'd left off. Lori went off to continue her education at Webster State University. After a year, she transferred to the University of Utah and majored in business. During this time, Mark had begun helping out with odd jobs around the neighborhood. In an unfortunate twist of fate, Mark had fallen off a roof and suffered several injuries, including a concussion, seizure, and a broken back. This incident led to Lori and Mark developing a stronger bond where she cared for him as he recovered, thus bringing their relationship full circle. Both of them began planning their future together. Mark enrolled in the University of Utah to begin his undergraduate degree before pursuing his actual dream of a career in medicine. Lori and Mark were preparing to take a big step forward in their relationship. On August 7, 1999, Lori and Mark married in a temple ceremony in Utah. In December that same year, Lori graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree in management. Mark, meanwhile, took on a job as a supervisor in an apartment complex that the couple had moved into after getting married, while still studying full-time. In this way, they could stay on at the apartment rent-free as long as the management duties were upheld. Their relationship only grew stronger after they were married. Family and friends would always describe them as a couple that loved each other very much and worked harmoniously together. They were both pursuing their goals while still maintaining active both in their church and in their community. Mark shared his passion for running with Lori, and the couple often spent time jogging together when not busy with work or church commitments. Soon, Lori landed a job as a stockbroker's assistant at Wells Fargo, and Mark took on a job as an orderly at a local psychiatric hospital while still finishing up his studies. As the years went by, Mark pursued his dreams of getting into medical school by interviewing with several universities, including the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Once he graduated, his hard work paid off, and he was accepted into the medical program at the University of North Carolina. Finally, their dreams were being realized, and now they could start the family they always wanted. Lori, though, had to give up her job to make the move to North Carolina in order for Mark to continue his studies. So in July 2004, she finally handed in her notice, and the young couple began preparations to make the move from Utah to North Carolina. It was during this time that the glowing Lori shared some exciting news. She was 5 weeks pregnant with their first child. After a decade-long relationship, their fairy tale life together would soon be complete. They were about to embark on the greatest journey of their lives. On July 19, 2004, Mark woke up to an empty bed. Lori, he assumed, had gone for a run before heading off to work. He called her office at around 10 a.m., but was told she hadn't come into work yet. After speaking to her coworker, he was transferred to her supervisor, who urged him to call the police and report her missing. Mark called the police, but was told to wait 24 hours to report her missing. He then left to search for her at Memory Grove Park, an area favored by runners because of its many running trails. While searching the park, Mark continued to contact family members to tell them that Lori had just vanished. Concerned friends and family gathered at the park to aid in the search for the missing pregnant woman. According to reports, over 1,000 people showed up to comb the area. Many were sure she'd been abducted. Family members, church members, and volunteers from the community searched wide and long, but to no avail. Eventually, Mark called the police again, now sounding frantic. Finally, they too joined the volunteers with K-9 units and helicopters, conducting an extensive search of the park. Lori's car had been located near the entrance, but she was nowhere to be seen. Both the Hacking and Source families called for a press conference in order to shine the spotlight on Lori's disappearance. At the press conference, Mark was visibly distraught, begging for information about Lori and for her safe return. While the family turned to the media for assistance, police started to look at the people closest to Lori, hoping to uncover new leads. As is with all cases involving a missing wife, the husband is always the first person of interest in an investigation. Mark was interviewed by the police, led by Salt Lake City Police Department Detective Kelly Kent. During the interview, Mark told investigators all about his marriage to Lori. He painted a picture of wedded bliss and understanding. He told them about the events of the morning leading up to the disappearance of his wife.
In your words, what's been going on so far today?
My wife got up at 5 this morning, went running, and I stayed in bed. when I woke up and she was gone, I just figured she hadn't awakened me, just let me sleep. So I went looking for her.
Okay, how did you know where to go look?
Because she runs in the same place every day.
Mark explained to investigators that he and Lori were about to move so that he could pursue his career in medicine. When Detective Kent inquired further, he explained that he was going to focus on oncology, the study and treatment of tumors. However, when Kent asked him how one would spell oncology, Mark could not spell the word. It raised eyebrows, but it didn't mean he was a killer. Investigators continued to interview individuals close to the couple. Their stories seemed to align with what Mark had told them, that the couple were happily married and ready for a new chapter in their lives. They may have been opposites, but somehow both Lori and Mark made their differences work well for their relationship. Lori's co-workers, too, attested to the relationship shared between the couple being sweet and intimate. In the meantime, investigators began an intensive search of Lori's car. The first thing they noticed was the way in which the car seat and rear-view mirrors were positioned. It looked more like a person with a larger frame than Lori's had last driven the car, someone perhaps the same height as Mark. They also found a receipt for a new mattress and linen that was purchased on July 19, 2004 at 10:23 a.m. from a nearby sleep and bedding shop. Investigators interviewed the owners of the shop and discovered Mark had been shopping around the same time he called police to report Lori missing. Mark was interviewed once more, but continued to deny any knowledge of Lori's disappearance. He then went on to retell his version of events from the previous interview with police. Police asked him about the mattress, and he told them that Lori had an accident and they'd thrown out the old mattress a week earlier. When asked what they were sleeping on, Mark responded that for the time being, they were using the old box spring. It was simple enough that he'd gone out to buy a new mattress for the move, but the timing seemed off. Once again, Mark was released as all evidence was purely circumstantial. At around 2 a.m. on July 20, 2004, police received a call from a Salt Lake City motel about a man who appeared to be screaming while running around naked outside the establishment. When police arrived, they discovered Mark hacking, naked except for his sandals. According to reports, Mark had come down to the motel earlier and started drinking heavily. He then consumed a bottle of barbiturates before stripping down and running around naked in the parking lot. Rather than arrest Mark, they contacted his family and his brother Scott came down to fetch him. On Mark's Palm Pilot, his brother found a strange note. It read, "To everyone from Mark, this is Justice. I'm so sorry." Police didn't believe Mark was insane in any way. They theorized that he knew the net was beginning to close in on him, and in a last-ditch attempt, he tried to make it seem like he had finally lost his mind. The giveaway was the fact that he was still wearing his sandals. An opinion upheld by famed FBI profiler Candace DeLong, who said, "He kept his shoes on, his sandals. That's not generally something we see in someone psychotic." His family did eventually check him into the university's psychiatric ward. While he was being kept under observation, investigators were starting to put together the pieces of the puzzle and discovered that Mark had been leading a double life. Mark was born on April 24, 1976, to Dr. Douglas Hacking and his wife Janet, who was a nurse. He was the fifth of 7 siblings, 3 brothers and 3 sisters. He was a prankster and was known to get himself into accidents if he could get a laugh out of his friends. His father was a well-known and respected pediatrician in the community, and his brothers were equally successful in their own rights. Knowing his background, it came as a shock not only to investigators but also to his family that Mark was not enrolled for the medical program at the University of North Carolina. Additionally, it was discovered that Mark did not even receive his undergraduate degree from the University of Utah. He'd flunked out in 2002 and had been pretending all along that he was going to school, even throughout his pretend graduation. With the media being equally invested in the investigation, even more lies from Mark's past would become exposed. Reports were found that alluded to Mark being involved in activities unbefitting of a true Mormon. There were allegations that Mark had actually been at the center of the scandal that led him returning early from his missionary work in 1996. These activities included smoking, drinking alcohol, and being involved intimately with some of the girls he'd recruited into the faith. The apple had clearly fallen very far from the tree. But the investigators were about to discover exactly how far. Having obtained a search warrant, investigators began a search of the couple's shared apartment. It was Detective Kent who noticed several inconsistencies in the apartment. Lori's purse, wallet, and car keys were found inside the apartment. The car keys, at least, should have been missing given the vehicle was found at the park. Lori's wedding ring was tucked away in her jewelry box, and the bathtub looked cleaned and smelled of bleach. Another thing Kent picked up was a large bouquet of flowers that she suspected was bought after a fight between the couple to smooth things over. This theory seemed to have been confirmed when investigators looked into the second bedroom and found a letter addressed to Mark from Lori. In the note, she was contemplating leaving him as she felt she had been married to a different version of him. The note read, "I want to grow old with you, but I can't do it under these conditions. I hate coming home from work because it hurts to be home in our apartment. I can't imagine life with you if things don't change. I got someone I don't want to spend the rest of my life with unless changes are made." Further inspection of the apartment revealed a new mattress had been bought and the bed sheets looked creased, not because they'd been slept in, but rather they had just been unwrapped from the packaging and made up. Furthermore, a hunting knife with hair and fibers on it was found tucked away in a drawer of the bedside table. On the handle was a fingerprint and a spot of blood. Investigators also searched Mark's SUV and discovered a blood stain on the back seat and handprints around the back door, consistent with someone bracing themselves as they loaded a heavy object into the car. The knife and the blood from the back seat of Mark's car were sent for testing. The crime was starting to look more like a homicide, but police were playing their cards close to their vests and did not openly reveal their suspicions. Instead, they started to build a timeline leading up to Lori's disappearance. Investigators received information from the University of Utah psychiatric ward about a man disposing of something large in their dumpsters. Dumpsters in and around the area were searched, but they had already been brought to the dump before the search for Lori had begun. Realizing that Mark had been using dumpsters to dispose of evidence, officers searched the area behind the church that Mark and Lori attended and discovered the old mattress. The top cover, though, had been ripped off. The discovery did not add up with the timeline Mark had given. The mattress would have been cleared out if it had been dumped a week earlier. Next, they contacted Lori's colleagues from Wells Fargo. They told investigators that when Mark called on Monday, it seemed unusual that he was unaware of Lori's whereabouts. Then they revealed an interesting piece of information. Lori had made some calls regarding financial aid from the university. She was visibly upset, according to coworkers, and had left the office in tears. However, when the couple attended a farewell party her friends were hosting for them much later that evening, Lori seemed to be in good spirits. Detectives then looked back at video footage from the convenience store showing Lori and Mark shopping on Sunday evening, a day before her disappearance. Store clerk Eric Holloman confirmed this. He told investigators he knew Mark because he frequently stopped to buy cigarettes. He remembered having a conversation with Mark, who made a signal when Lori's back was turned to tell him not to tell her about his smoking habit. Holloman added that Mark was happy, but Lori seemed down. Then at around 1:30 a.m., Mark came back to the convenience store, alone this time. It made police wonder if he'd already committed the crime or was contemplating doing it. By now, though, police had received new information. The blood found on the knife and in the car matched Lori's. Without a body, though, there was still no case. However, yet another twist in the bizarre story awaited them. A week after Lori was reported missing, officials called off the volunteer search following new information they'd received. Their new focus was to be confined to the municipal landfills and would be conducted by specialist teams. The information was kept hushed until Mark was released from the psychiatric ward. While undergoing treatment for his breakdown, Mark engaged the services of defense attorney G. Gilbert Athay. On August 2, 2004, Mark was arrested on suspicion of the aggravated murder of his wife, Lori. The public soon became aware that Mark Hacking was now the prime suspect in the murder of Lori Hacking. Mark's father, Douglas, confirmed this in a statement he gave to the media. He explained that on July 24, 2004, his sons Scott and Lance visited Mark while he was receiving treatment for his emotional meltdown. They confronted him about Lori, and he broke down and confessed to everything. Mark alleged that Lori had been making inquiries into student housing and financial aid offered by the University of North Carolina when she discovered his trail of lies. This happened on July 16, 2004, the same day her coworkers reported she'd been upset and left work. When Lori confronted him, he spun another tale about how a computer glitch may have been responsible for his application not reaching their offices on time. She left a message with the university regarding this problem and asked that they call her back to iron out any issues. It was the weekend, and Lori could not get a response until Monday. But when Monday finally came, she discovered that Mark had fabricated his entire life. Mark then explained that the incident had caused some strain, but somehow they were able to overcome their problems. However, Mark was offended by how Lori had belittled him. When he discovered her letter calling him out on his actions, he felt further insulted. Finding his .22 caliber rifle, he left the note in the spare room and walked into the master bedroom where he shot Lori in the head. Afterwards, he rolled up her body in garbage bags and carpet and placed her in the back seat of his SUV. He then ripped the top cover off the mattress and cleaned up, stuffing all evidence into more garbage bags. He tied the torn mattress to the roof of his SUV before stuffing all the evidence, along with Lori's lifeless body, onto the back seat. At the university, he dumped Lori's body in the garbage bags. At the church, he disposed of the mattress. All this, he told his brothers, was to cover up the crime. Douglas added that he believed Mark suffered a psychological breakdown when Lori discovered his deception. He felt that Mark had been under immense pressure, given their family's reputation and standing within the community. On August 9, 2004, first-degree murder charges were filed against Mark. On October 1, 2004, after a month of combing the landfills with pitchforks and gloved hands, Sergeant J.R. Nelson of the SLCPD found hair and part of the jawbone belonging to Lori. The majority of her remains were eventually found and sent to the coroner's office for examination. Medical examiners were able to identify her through dental records. Due to the state of decomposition, though, examiners could not determine her exact cause of death or if she was, in fact, pregnant. This meant they would be unable to charge him with the death of the unborn baby. The discovery of Lori's body strengthened the case against Mark, said Salt Lake Deputy District Attorney Bob Stott. He said that now they could prove a murder took place. Stott added that it was a great day for the family too, knowing that Lori's final resting place would not be at the bottom of a landfill. On October 29, 2004, Mark pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder charges despite pleas from Lori's brother, Paul Soares, to save his family the added grief by pleading guilty. However, he had a change of heart when, on April 15, 2005, he changed his plea to guilty in exchange for prosecutors dropping the additional charges against him. On June 6, 2004, Mark was sentenced to 6 years to life in prison under Utah law at the time. He had an extra year added to his minimum term due to the fact that he'd killed Lori with a firearm. In July 2005, the Utah Board of Parolees declared that Mark would not be considered for parole until 2035. He will have to serve a minimum of 30 years. The news pleased Thelma Soares, Lori's mother, who felt the 6-year minimum was an insult to Lori, her unborn baby, and her family. The change in the minimum sentence to be served by Mark, though, had renewed her faith in the justice system. Lori's family eventually removed her married name from her tombstone and replaced it with a Portuguese word, filhinha, which translates to little daughter. Following the public outcry of the 5-year minimum sentence imposed on felons charged with first-degree murder, Utah House Bill 102, or Lori's Law, was passed on March 20, 2006. Those convicted of first-degree murder now face a 15-year minimum sentence before being considered for parole. On June 6, 2005, Mark's father Douglas released their final statement to the press regarding the murder and clarified several events leading to the confession and conviction. It ended with a quote from Mark. The quote expressed Mark acknowledged his actions and he hopes that one day he could become the man Lori always wanted him to be. In June 2006, Utah prison officials discovered Mark had been selling personal items that included signed autographs and hand tracings to an online site called Murder Auction. Mark has agreed to stop selling items online since being caught. Possibly the most twisted aspect of this case is the murder of a woman by the man she loved and trusted. In marriage, we vow to honor, protect, and always be honest. But Mark was never the man Lori believed she married. Why do you think that Mark felt he had no other option but to lie to Lori and his family? And how did he go from lying to committing murder? Do you think that justice was served in this case? Let us know in the comments below, and please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And don't forget to hit the notification bell to get more fresh content directly to your inbox. Until next time, stay safe.